Well, welcome back to ABA Generalized. We have a lovely guest today, my coworker, Lindsay. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thanks, Erica. Happy to be here.
She is currently in my house recording with us, so we don't have another screen. So if you are listening to us, she's in the same room as me. So yeah. All right. Anyways.
All right,
Go
Lindsay. So tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do in your free time, what your current title is, how long have you been a BCBA and in the field?
Sure. So I live here in Charleston. I've been here for almost 20 years. Love it. In my free time, spend a lot of time with my dog, who is also here because he is Erica's dog's bestie. So they're downstairs running around. So we love going on walks around town. It's beautiful here. The weather's been great. So lots of exploring with Carlos. I'm a big reader. I love to cook. I have been a BCBA since 2019. I've been in the field since 2016. Started as an RBT, fell in love, and I've been a BCBA since 2019. I'm currently the regional coordinator for a company in town. So my role is basically to oversee the team of analysts and RBTs in our area. So I do a lot of working with insurance companies, making sure everyone has authorizations, staffing caseloads, a lot of clinical support, which is a big passion of mine, to be able to continue to give that ongoing training to my team. I was the senior behavior analyst before I took the regional coordinator position, which that role was really working with our analysts to kind of help develop clinical skills. So I've kind of kept that as I moved into the RC role because it's just something I love doing. And then I also still have a caseload just so I can continue to develop my own personal skills. So.
But not 12 clients.
But not 12 clients, no, just 3.
When she was our senior, she had 12 clients, and I think it was just harder for you to pass off than anything.
It was. But you just form such a connection with your kiddos. It's hard to reduce that caseload. But yeah, that's about me.
So then what brought you into the field of ABA, like even as an RBT?
Sure. So I got my bachelor's degree in early childhood education. I knew that I wanted to work with kids. I kind of had my entire life and just decided to be a teacher. And I finished school and didn't really want to do the teacher life. I mean, to be completely transparent, the teacher salaries in this state are less than ideal. I had family going through kind of a crisis and didn't feel comfortable supporting them all on a teacher salary. So kind of did a 180 and did a whole nother life in the food and bev world. And then after a few years of that, I was like, you know what, I'm ready to get back to working with kids, but I wanted to do something more specialized. And actually a therapist at the time that I was seeing, he was a clinical psychologist and then was supporting a ABA company on the side. I'd never heard of ABA. And I was just kind of chatting with him about wanting to get back into the field in some way. And he was like, you should check out ABA. Like, I think you would be a really good fit for this. So started applying around town, took a job at a smaller company and just like fell in love with it. Just like the duality of the field, it's like so scientific and data driven, and we're analyzing things and it's just very precise, but then you have to be so creative and like, how can I like take this skill but then teach it to this kid in a way that it's going to make sense, and you're working with people and you're like talking and playing, and I was just like, I love that. It's like my two strengths combined. So I was like, this is it for me, let's go to grad school.
Yeah, and there's so many hats like within ABA too, like you were just saying, like you're working with kids, but not only are you working with kids, but you're working with the therapist and you're working with the BCBA, and then you're working with the families. You have to train not only like the technicians within our roles, right, as BCBAs, but you're also training the parents.
Yes, for sure.
So I know you had wanted to come on to talk a little bit about what we call in the field parent training, and that is what our code is when we have to do any billing. It's the family guidance, the 5-6 code. But how do you? I know that you want to call it more of that caregiver engagement. So how often do you run caregiver engage or how often do you run caregiver training or caregiver engagement?
Yeah. So, and just to explain kind of what I like to call it caregiver engagement, I mean, first caregiver, like, as opposed to parents, we're not only working with parents, right? We're working with any stakeholder. So that could be grandparents, aunts, uncles, babysitters, teachers, daycares. Like we want to really ensure that we're capturing all key stakeholders. And then engagement over training. I don't want it to seem like we're just going to sit down and lecture. I think sometimes stakeholders will hear that word and maybe feel intimidated by it. Like I remember one time mom was like, do I need to like get a notebook? What is this going to be like school? Should I? And I think engagement is more naturalistic, right? Like I want them to be engaged in the session so they can learn naturally. I want that to carry over outside of sessions. I want them to feel like this is just a way that we can help generalize the skills to them, not like a formal sit down lecture, which sometimes it does need to be more formal parent training. Maybe if we have a specific skill that we want to do specific training on, but I think just globally looking at it, like how can I get this parent, this stakeholder involved in the session so they can see what we're doing and take some pieces home. How often do I run it? I mean, I'm grateful to have a family where mom is very involved. So she is engaged in every single one of our sessions, whether or not I am billing that 5-6 code or not. But I would say I try to get that like minimum once a month contact if they're not always directly involved in session. And yeah, I would say my goal would be a weekly contact. Yeah.
And that's hard.
It is hard.
I mean, I know, Anne, you're now in a school, but like when you were even in the field or like in a company, right? Like I know it's hard for me to try and get parents to want to sit through like teaching them something. I don't know, like just like discussing like ABA terminology sometimes. Like I do also have a family that I can think of at the top of my head that will sit and like just talk to me the entire session while I'm also supervising a technician, and I'm trying to like tell them like, okay, we're doing this because of what this, and I don't know if you wanted to talk about your experience with that too.
Yeah, I think it depends on your rapport with the parents. I think having a good rapport with them, and if it's whether it's like a client who's just been transferred to or brand new to the ABA world, like right off the bat, they should know like, hey, we are here. We're not babysitters. You need to be involved, actively involved in and outside of sessions. And, it's really important for that generalization for our clients. So, they need to observe our sessions and see how we're our verbiage and like how we're saying or not saying things or how we're reacting. And of course, like breaking down all the technical terms for them so that they understand what the goals are and having their input on goals too. If they aren't sure of a goal, or if they're like, hey, can we, I really want to work on this with my child. Can we make that into a goal? Like they, really making them involved from the beginning, I think is much easier than, if you get like a transfer case and they have this set of expectations and then you're like, well, no, this is how sessions should really be run. Like, I think that can be a barrier sometimes. It's like, no, we're going to switch things up now. And this is how sessions should look.
Yeah, I love that you made that point of setting that expectation from the beginning. I think that is such a crucial conversation to have. I try to wrap that into the initial assessment. And then like when we get started, like, hey, this is not only an expectation for me, but also the funding source, which I love that the funding source makes that a requirement because it is so crucial to success, and trying to present it in that way where it's like, your kid can go through all of this, but if you're not involved, like what's the point of us being here? So getting that buy-in in the beginning is super important. Yeah.
I also think it's hard. Oh, I was just going to say, just thinking about like the move from COVID, like a lot of parents work from home now and they might be working during sessions, and that can be hard to like, okay, when do I interrupt? Or like maybe talking to them beforehand, like I'm coming out, we're going to run this, family guidance, or however it's worded. I'm in California, so I'm pretty sure here it's still parent training. But, you know, like giving them like, hey, you know, can we set aside like 30 minutes in today's session so that they can kind of prepare if they're working in the session so that they can step away. That was a barrier when I was still in homes.
Yeah.
I know, like as an RBT, I struggled a lot with like, because I'm in the home every single day, and the parents want to like come to me and ask questions about the goals, ask questions about the program or whatever. And it's like, okay, I can tell you how I'm running it, but like when it comes to like why this goal was written or anything, like you have to talk to the BCBA about it. And I remember like just getting, not so much in like the last position I had, but like when we all worked together, like I definitely had that question all the time. I'm like, you have to ask the BCBA. Like I can explain again how I'm running it and everything. And sometimes I feel like they didn't like that answer because again, they're comfortable with me. They see me every single day. I'm in their home the most. And it's like, no, I want your answer. Or they would ask my opinion of like, what goals do you think we should do next? And it's like, I am not in the position to say, like, sure, do I have my opinions? Absolutely. But I'm not obligated to, I can't tell you.
Great point. I mean, I think that definitely is one of the biggest barriers, is creating that opportunity for the analysts and the parents to have that rapport built, because just like with our kids, like we're not going to see a change in their behavior if there's no rapport. So I think prioritizing, making sure that you've set aside that time for, there to be those conversations with the parents. And I think sometimes our RBTs are like so excited for supervision. They're like, oh my gosh, I have so many questions, so many things I want to see. And we're excited to provide that training. So like we might use up our whole chunk of time on the RBT. And then it's like, well, shoot, I didn't like get a chance to chat with mom and dad. So definitely one of the biggest barriers is scheduling. I try to prompt the team to like be creative with how you're scheduling it. If you don't have a lot of midday clients, we'll see if mom wants to grab coffee with you and you can sit down and like talk through some of the goals and look at the graphs together. Or, like you said, 15 minutes at the end of session where you can just pull mom in for XYZ. So I think being creative and how we can work that in a way that works for everybody involved is really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been trying to just create rapport with families, even though I've had a couple of them for a while. Like it's still hard to, I think, give that feedback for the really tough times when you want to like correct their behavior, because some of them can, I don't know, like as a parent, you don't want to be told by someone who doesn't have kids.
Sure.
Like,
sure.
oh, you should change doing X, Y, or Z.
Absolutely.
So like, I don't know, that's something that's been challenging for me personally, is like making sure that I have that rapport with the family to be able to be like, okay, so this is what I would do differently next time.
Yeah.
Or, why don't we try doing this in the moment, know?
I think that's another barrier that I wanted to mention is especially from newer analysts are coming to me and they're like, that is their biggest, I'd say, intimidation factor. It's like, how can I walk into this person's home and essentially tell them how to parent, where that rapport will help with that. But I also think it is intimidating for you to come in and say, okay, you've been doing it this way, I'm going to tell you how to do it another way. And I think having the confidence in what it is that you're sharing and having a conversation with the parents too, like, hey, we're all in this to help your child. Like, let's have a patience, kindness, trust with each other, and know that we're here for the mutual outcome, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So is there something that you find that works really well when, like, to get the parents engaged, like, during their program, or like, as you said, even if it's not during the actual session being run, like even meeting with them separately, like what do you find works well?
I think two things come to mind right off the rip. Buy-in, first off, I think really helps. An example pops into my head. The client that I'm currently working with, I've been with him for a couple years, but I went on and did his initial assessment and it went really great. I was getting ready to leave and the mom was like, wait. I cannot let you leave my house until you tell me. I don't know what to do about this door slamming. Like, he runs and he slams the door when he gets mad and his dad gets upset. And it was like, that was their one thing that they could not handle. And she's like, please just give me some advice on this before you leave, because we're going crazy. We talked about it for a minute. It was 100% attention maintained. I was like, it's going to be hard. Ignore it. You're going to see his behavior spike for a little bit. That means you're doing the right thing. Keep ignoring it. Sure enough, I came back a couple of weeks later to get session started. She was like, give me all the ABA. This is working. Like, we haven't seen a door slam in 3 weeks. So I think finding a way to even make a slight change to where they can see that the science works, right? And we have that buy-in. I feel like they get more motivated to participate and learn and generalize things outside. I think the other thing to keep in mind, and something that I find that works really well to get them engaged, is being able to look at the caregiver like a client too, right? What are their barriers? What's their learning history? Where are they coming from? Where can I say, okay, this is maybe my ultimate outcome for their participation or execution of this goal, but where are they at now? And how can I like shape their behavior to get them there? I think sometimes analysts come in with like these really lofty parent training goals, and it's unattainable for the parent to achieve that, right? I use a tool a lot called the ACT Parent Training Matrix. It's I'll send you some articles and some research on it. It's not something that I made up, and I'm not going to take credit for it, but I do use it all the time, and it's phenomenal. It's basically like a little grid, and you jot down your answers through a conversation. The first question is like, what are some things that are motivating for your child or whoever the client is, right? What are the scary, uncomfortable, negative things that pop up in a day? What are some of the things that they do to find relief from those negative, scary things that pop up in a day? And then what are the goals we can put in place to bring them closer to the things that they love? So just in that little conversation about the client, we've identified potential reinforcers, potential behaviors, potential coping skills, and maybe some goals or like functional things that are going to bring us closer to what we want. We have the same conversation with the parent. And so then I'm identifying like, okay, well, this mom is sharing that she's having a really hard time juggling being a single mom and having 3 kids with autism. You know, she doesn't have time in the day for X, Y, Z. So I can adjust what I'm doing based off learning those barriers. Or hearing mom say like, I'm really anxious when I drive with the kids in the car. So I might not put in a goal that we're going to drive to the grocery store every day. So just that framework kind of sets not only an opportunity for us to have that rapport, but it really helps me identify where they're coming from, what they're dealing with, so I can modify. And then the third conversation we have is like, okay, as a treatment team, what are we trying to achieve? What are some things that we might stray away from? Like I always give the example, avoiding parent training, not scheduling time for it. What are some of the things we can do to bring us closer to success with kiddo? Making sure we schedule parent trainings, making sure we have open, honest communication. So it really sets like a great framework in the beginning. Yeah, that was a very long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. No, I mean, it's so informative. And I know that you had come out with me actually about a little under a year ago to talk to a family about the ACT matrix. And I feel like they had a lot of great feedback for us. And it's like, and I don't know if you've used it before. It's literally like I had never seen this tool before. So I don't know.
I'll send it your way.
I wish I had.
Yes, I was going to ask, like, can I use this in schools with teachers who I don't have buy-in with?
Yes.
He's got a great one where it's like really hard to create.
We can talk after. Yeah, I need.
I did a really great CEU, like attended a great CEU on it, so I'll send all the info over for you.
Okay, yeah, that would be great.
But it's awesome because I think that we saw an increase in her like understanding of what we do versus like not, because I think like that also has a lot to attribute. So
do you think that caregiver engagement is an underutilized practice?
I do, and I can say this with certainty. I review the utilization for every single client in our region, which is what, 195 right now. So I do think that we have missed the mark on making sure that we're at least scheduling it and building that code. I can't see if that's happening during supervision and it's just not formal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we had much formal training of it when we became BCBAs, and yeah, even like as an RBT, and I don't know if it's the same in South Carolina where you guys are, but I know here the techs couldn't run the parent training goals, and I ran them in PA as an RBT, so I don't know.
I definitely
were supposed to.
I've definitely run goals. It's I've also like, I don't know if it's like caregiver goals specifically, but I know like I had trouble with a client the teacher was actually causing more behaviors in the student. All of his behaviors were attention seeking, and she would immediately give him the attention as soon as he would start. So we actually needed to take data on her, like on our platform, to be like, no, like you're actually making this worse. But I've also run, I don't know, I guess like getting that same teacher, like she ran an antecedent strategy, like then being able to count that. So yeah, again, and to your point, is it like allowed? I don't know, but I've also definitely run it in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and I should say I did it without the BCBA present. So like I know here when I would go out in homes, you know, the text would open up the parent goals, but they couldn't run them unless it was either like I had to run them or they had to run them while I was supervising. And not outside of sessions that I wasn't there.
Yeah, I haven't seen that issue in our state. I mean, we definitely have goals in place where the RBT might be collecting data on it when we're not present. But that might be a funding source limitation in certain places. I know that the BCBA does need to be involved in parent training and take data on those goals during those sessions, but I don't think it's, not allowing the RBT to.
I think that I've guided my RBTs that are seasoned and more like the student analysts that understand the goals. So we have student analysts instead of, and you were technically a student analyst with our previous company. That's kind of like how I would frame it. The people that are collecting their hours or even just our really seasoned RBTs is who I'm allowing, like, okay, if you see this occur within the session, you can take that data on that in that caregiver portion. And it's usually just like a frequency thing or like a percentage, like super easy. Like, did you do this? Did you not do this?
Yes.
Taking
data on something that's occurring, not necessarily like running the goal with the parent.
You're not teaching, or it's just like, oh, I saw mom give a token or whatever. Check.
So how do you typically address parent training or caregiver engagement?
What do you mean?
So like do you like reach out to them and schedule it on like a additional basis? Do you pull the parent aside during the session just spontaneously, like, hey, this occurred, I really want to talk about this? Like, how do you typically get that engagement?
Sure. So I definitely individualize it based on the specific client, their needs, the parent, the situation that we're in. I would say it depends on what type of support is needed at that moment, right? So I have some parents who are really interested in learning, and we've sat down and gone through like PowerPoints on functional communication together. I think having some kind of combination of all of those things that you just listed, Erica, right? Like pulling them in, hey, we've been working on brushing teeth. We're like at this stage in our prompt fading. I really want to start transferring it over to you. So I'm going to run it. Can you run it after me so I can watch you and make sure that you can like practice this when, we're not here tomorrow. So I think just a combination of having them do more casual net style sessions with us, and then also that formal parent training. It is tricky when parents are not wanting to be involved and maybe not present. And so look at and I keep saying parent, I mean like caregiver, right?
Because it could be grandma, it can be, aunt, it could be uncle, it could be anyone that's really like specifically involved in the client's life.
Right. So look at them like you would a client. Like, what are some behavioral strategies that we can use to increase that participation? I mean, sometimes like a forced choice. Hey, mom, like we really need to practice toothbrushing together. Would you like to do it in our session on Monday, or I'll also be there on next Wednesday? Which day works best for you? I'll put it on the calendar. Some of those antecedent strategies, like texting mom a day before. Hey, I'm going to be there tomorrow. Don't forget, we're going to do parent training at XYZ. And then making sure we're coming in with some reinforcement. Like, I really appreciate you joining us today. That was really meaningful. I think this is really, helpful for me to observe you doing this, and I, can't wait to do it next month or whatever. So just looking at it like we would a client, right? ABA can be used to do anything. Like, why not apply it to parent training?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know I created like I know we talked about this podcast, but I created like a spreadsheet for a parent for like toileting specifically. And, you know, I think that the fact that they're even doing it outside of session is huge,
Yeah.
right? Like, and so like when I went into session this past week, I praised them. I was like, oh my gosh, this looks amazing. I'm so proud of you for doing this.
Mhm.
You know, what barriers are you encountering? Do you think we're ready to make that
Yes.
next step? You know, and it wasn't necessarily like a super formal training because like, you know, like Anne was saying even before, like parents work during this time,
Yeah.
like during our sessions. And so I'm just like standing there, I'm like, hey, like, what can we do? Like, what do you have a couple seconds? And just kind of like, you know, enmeshing it into our session.
Sure.
But yes, like providing that praise, providing that reinforcement so that they feel like we don't want them to just feel like they're involved. We want them to be involved.
Right. It's a collaborative experience. And I think part of that too is like that parent specifically, because I know who she's talking about, you know, that is such a motivator for mom to get this skill learned, right? Like she wants to be invested because once he obtains this skill, like that's life-changing for her. So I think we're also looking at the social validity of the goals we're putting in place. Like, why would I put like, I don't know, I'm not thinking of a good example off the top of my head, but like, why would I put a goal in place that the parent is like that's not valid to our family, our culture, like that's not something that I want to see happen. Like, I think we need to take that into consideration instead of imparting what we think needs to be done. Like, it is a collaborative situation. Yeah.
I had a parent, she had twins with us, not at our clinic that we all work together at my next one. She had twins. She was very supportive, very willing to do parent training, all of that. But then when she came in and the BCBA would try and talk to her, be like, okay, what do you want to see? Like, what goals do you want to work on? She was like, no, we're good. Like, whatever you want to do. Like, kind of was like, I guess like I appreciate her, like, again, being involved in like everything else, but like the BCBA struggled because she's like, well, I'm running out of ideas of like what to work on because I don't know what barriers they're seeing at home, like with us not there. So like, do you have any advice of like what you would do in that type of situation?
So I think that is why I can 100% understand why a clinic has benefits, but being able to do the in-home model, we're able to capture that, right? Like I can see, well, you're saying he's 100% independent with daily living skills, but I just watched you full physical prompt through hand washing, feeding, and dressing. So like that tells me there's a bunch of goals we can work on right there. Yeah, I would say, I mean, is there an opportunity to have at least like...
So it was actually clinic and home that we serviced them. So, and I know there was some skills in the home that like we definitely saw like, hey, we need to work on this, but the parent never acknowledged that needed to be worked on.
And that's tough too, right? Because that social validity piece, sure, there are things where I'm going to say, you know what, this is like necessary for health, safety, living, like our essential for living skills, right? Like I am going to push, like we do need to learn this, but if it's not something the parent is like, that's not important to me, I don't want them to learn that, it's tricky. I think coming up with goals should be a combination of what the family would like to work on and also a testament to our assessment skills, right? Like picking the right assessment tool. I could go on another podcast talking about that. And coming in and being able to be like, hey, mom, dad, we just did this awesome assessment tool. These are the things that I feel like would be really meaningful for your child. Do any of these like spark your fancy that you want us to prioritize? So
I like that saying, spark your fancy.
I agree. Well, Lindsay, is there any questions that you have for us before we wrap up for the day?
Think about questions for y'all.
You know me, so you don't have to ask me any questions.
No, you can full out ask Erica anything. She's on the spot right now.
What kind of support do you feel like you need with parent training? Like, where do you feel like either your skills as an individual, you know, practitioner or just like our field in general, where do you feel like training is missing the mark to make you feel supported and ready to like conquer that?
So I think Anne and I kind of touched upon that earlier, is like we had zero parent training. Like like train, like for us to learn how to do parent training. So I feel like personally, and I know, you know, Anne, you can talk about this, and G, you can too, because you were in school for a little bit. We weren't taught like this is what you should work on. These are the goals that might be beneficial for a family. Because when I came to us, like I was like, they're separate goals. Like I don't think that we had separate goals for them at our previous company.
I did, but I think maybe, I don't know if it was a requirement. Like it was very loosey-goosey still, I think. But I remember having separate goals, and like even like the RBTs would ask me like, how do I run this like with a teacher? And I'm like, I don't figure. I'm like, if you see them do it, mark it. If you need to give them a reminder, like mark it as a 0. Like that was the extent to like how it was understood for me. But yeah, like when I was an RBT, I don't even know if there were parent goals to like see that as a model, like to see a BCBA model, what that looked like. So I think that's hard because like for me, for my learning, this is why I love that we did social skills so much, was because I got to see how other RBTs ran goals, and I didn't have that model. So
well,
that's where I got stuck.
For a BCBA in our community that I love dearly. She has been working on a parent training curriculum over the last year or so, and I think she's almost finished with it, but it will be like a really helpful guide for BCBAs in regards to how they can approach caregiver engagement, and it includes like fidelity checklists and like competency skills checks throughout. So
I think everyone needs that. I think that's like across the board, because like obviously I'm not writing the parent training goals, but even like running them, I feel like because the BCBA didn't have the training, like I definitely didn't get any training of like what I'm supposed to be doing or how I can help on my end as well. So like it definitely trickles all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I think like that's I don't know, that's my biggest barrier is like I didn't have that training. I never was taught it. Like it's not something they teach you in school either. They're not like, oh, like you need to have caregiver involvement. And it's just like what we heavily focus on in grad school is, and even on the BCBA exam, right? Like there's nothing about that stuff.
I don't remember. That was a long time ago.
But I remember, like, I don't remember like being like, oh yeah, like, you know, you have to, you teach parents in this aspect, or, you know, we even do any sort of parent training. You kind of just are within these homes and situations. And
well, and that's where I think your supervision can play a key role in your success with that too. Is like if you're working with a mentor that does have great parent training skills and they're throwing you in the fire as a student analyst. I mean, I know mine did. It was like, you're doing the parent training this month. So there's definitely an element of confidence and comfortability with running those too. So,
yeah. And that's something that I'm personally trying to get better at.
You're doing great. All the parents love you and you're engaged in sessions.
She has to say that because she's on a podcast right now, right?
Well, no, she doesn't. She's telling the truth. Come on. Well, thank you, Lindsay, for coming on today. And we appreciate your talking about caregiver engagement and, you know, giving us some tips and tricks. Because again, as everyone has expressed, I think this is something that definitely doesn't get talked about enough, and a lot of people get stuck with that. So yeah, thank you again. If anyone listening wants to be on our podcast, you can email us at aba.generalized.podcast@gmail.com. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at aba_generalized_the_pod. We will update you on if there's not an episode dropping or anything like that. If you're watching us on YouTube, you'll see our beautiful faces, ABA Generalized, and remember to rate, review, and subscribe.
ABA Generalized, the podcast, is not providing professional advice. Please seek a professional in your area for specific advice and support.